child repeats back, well, I'm thinking to myself, these are both fricatives. So there's some good information there across where fricatives are around sort of the mid-frequencies. Is a consonant that requires the speaker to really constrict the airflow. So is actually a pretty good attempt at I'm thinking to myself, speech production wise, it's closing in on a good attempt. Is also not voiced, so this matches the sh. So I'm wondering whether it's more of a speech production issue than a hearing issue. So I'm going to be monitoring speech development. Maybe I'll try a discrimination task and maybe put a bit more focus on speech production activities. What about some other responses? For example, if the child hears sh and repeats back so this response is missing both the fricative information and the voice off information. So this suggests there's maybe not enough auditory information received in the higher frequencies from 2000 up. So Diana, what are you thinking here?
So in this particular scenario, as you can see on the screen, probably we're looking at the middle part of the array, the mid frequencies. So potentially channel 5 to 8, and then apply some minor changes and see how that affects the child's response to sound.
Terrific. What about when we're delivering? Well, lots of things can happen when you're delivering. For example, me not hearing it at all earlier, but pleasingly, my acuity has improved since that, and I have been able to detect that. So saying, and the child says, shh. Well, this response is a pretty good attempt because shh is a match of frication. We've got the fricative there and also matches voicing. So I'm thinking it could be a bit of immature speech production. Typically is a bit harder to produce than sh. There's a bit more acoustic information in sh. You could see that from that slide that Diana presented earlier with the spectrogram information of sh. There's a lot of acoustic information in sh. So we're going to monitor this production and take care to look at the high frequencies in the map. We could introduce some speech discrimination tasks. So maybe when we're doing a pointing and identification to ensure that the child can hear the difference between these sounds. A child may also say a high-pitched E sound. So when we're delivering, they might try for E, something like this. This is telling you that they're getting the high-frequency information, but they just maybe need a bit more practice with their using their auditory feedback loop. So this process where the child produces the sound and listens to themselves produce the sound and tries to match it with what they hear. But there's probably some mapping changes that you want to explore too, Diana. What are you thinking?
Yeah, definitely. So in this scenario, again, this sounds shares a couple of formats. So we will be looking at the channels towards the high frequencies again. So in this scenario, looking at channel 9 to 12, and again, just applying some changes to that, and then checking again if that has an effect on how sh and s is perceived by the child.
Oh, this is a bit of a sad one. Look at that. He's crying. Delivering the sound ah, and the child is crying. Well, maybe I said the sound too loud for a start. But aside from that, the child should not be distressed. Right, Diana?
Yes.
So what are you thinking?
So it's possibly that the input is maybe too loud. So the child might be crying, maybe trying to flick off the coil of their head, so just showing some distress. So in this particular scenario, we know that ah is more on the mid-frequency range. So we'd be looking at the channels in that area around electrode 5 to 8, and then decrease the sound and then test again.
Yeah, okay. There's no reason for any child to be distressed by loud sounds, or any person really. All right, what about this one where we're saying ooh and the child repeats back and we actually saw an example of that in the Rehab at Home video. It might have been the other way around. Either way, delivering and the child repeats back ooh. I think I've got a slide there. That's the same one. Or hears ooh and says Well, this is a bit of a tricky one because you can see here that and ooh share a lot of the same acoustic properties, and those that results in stimulation on the same electrodes. So this is a very common problem. What are we going to do from the clinicians, so the speechy side of things or the teacher of the deaf side of things? You can try adding in some super segmental information. So I know I said earlier, don't add in super segmental information. Gold standard is to not. But here we have two sounds that have got very similar acoustic properties. So by adding in super segmental information, we might add in those auditory cues that help our recipients hear the difference between these sounds. We can introduce discrimination tasks. We can even try and use auditory sandwich. So maybe using some lip reading. Listen while I say watch while I say now listen again while I say Maybe this will just help them attach a bit more meaning to when they hear and see something, and then you can put it back into listening alone. Lots of similar acoustic properties. So Diana, what are you thinking when it comes to mapping programming changes?
I mean, I agree with you. They do share a lot of frequency energy, as per se. So if we could potentially apply some changes in the low frequencies, so electrode 1 to 4, but again, this is the most common Ling sounds that I see in clinic that are getting them confused between the two. So potentially look at changes in the low frequencies, and then perhaps using some super segmentals just to give that definition between one sound or the other.
Yeah, great. And this is what I meant by training discrimination with the auditory sandwich. So you could set up the cards or whatever props you use to help build that association between the sound and an object, sound and a picture. Okay, listen while I say Okay, listen again while I say Now listen while I say, and obviously you're going to be pointing the card, listen while I say ooh, and look while I say ooh. Now listen while I say ooh, and then see if they can hear the difference. There's tiny, minute acoustic differences between these for implant users, and it can possibly be trained. Another opportunity is to introduce a functional discrimination task. So this might reassure families if they're perseverating on this difficulty that their child is having. Oh, they can't hear the difference between and ooh. Well, functionally, this doesn't really impact speech perception. If you're thinking about words where this contrast becomes significant, moo and ooh, you could try and train that. Here, the child will get the advantage of hearing the acoustic transitions between the consonant and the vowel oo in moo. That adds in additional acoustic information. And parents will be reassured, actually, they can hear the difference between moo and oo. It's not just sounding like constantly or ooh constantly. So putting it into a functional context can be really reassuring for families. I wanted to introduce, if you haven't found this really great resource yet, the Building Blocks of Speech. The Building Blocks of Speech is a 2-page resource. You can print it off yourself. I don't know if you've got the web shop there in Singapore, Eros, where people can order hard copies of this, but it prints off really beautifully, even in A4, or you can purchase it in A5. What I like about this resource, so this page here has got all of the formant information of all of the vowels over here. Audiologists love this, Diana, don't they? Because, audiologists, they love numbers.
Yes.
And over here, we've got all of the acoustic information, the frequency information for all of the English consonants. A really great resource. So if you're thinking to yourself, I'm really not sure whether the child does have access to all of the acoustic properties of the Ling sounds, and you want to test different sound, choose a different sound, understand why you are testing it, and use this as a reference document to understand the formants and the frequencies that you are testing. Speech pathologists and teachers love this side of the resource, which goes into the developmental acquisition of speech sounds. So this is really valuable when you are looking at imitation responses to understand which sounds develop early in typically developing children and which sounds are harder for children to produce. We've also got over here common phonological patterns. So these are typical speech errors that we see in typically developing children. And for our children using hearing technology, we expect them to go through the same developmental acquisition of speech sounds, including the developmental errors that we see in phonological patterns or phonological processes. And down here we have atypical phonological patterns. So I think Donna's going to put a copy of this into chat for you so that you can download it from there or from the website. So to summarize what we love about the Ling sound test, if your listener did respond positively to all of the sounds, this lets us know that they are ready for a new day of hearing and building listening and spoken language skills. The Ling sound test is a really valuable tool for audiologists, for speech pathologists, for teachers of the deaf, educators working with children with hearing technology. Before we go over to questions, we've got a little bit of an activity that I'm hoping you will join us with by typing your responses in chat. Now, I can't see the chat, so I'm hoping, Donna, you can read out the responses for me. Let's start from low to high. What's the lowest Ling sound, or the sound that's got the dominant energy at the lowest frequency? Can you see the chat there?
Yep,
Donna?
yep, they've got it. Yes,
Yeah.
they're going wild on that.
Oh,
Yep.
Okay, they've got it going well. Okay, let's have it. Yes, it is. Terrific. All right, what's next on the list? What are you going to choose for the next one up? The next highest frequency after.
In an ooh.
So I talked a little bit about the ones that have got very close acoustic energy.
Ooh. Yeah, I'm getting mostly ooh, Rebecca.
Yes, remember we talked about these two very close, aligning their acoustic energy almost in exactly the same spots. So yes, there is confusion with these two. They are very close together. What are we going to go for next? Next highest.
Yep.
Love your work. There you have it. It's ah. Well done all. What's next?
E.